Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and we are done with international break. We are done with international football all the way until March. Scotland's heroics really did put a wee cherry on top of the cake of this international break, but for Celtic fans it has been all about Celtic coming out of the international break. We've had the club annual statements reported, the AGM, and so much more. But on Saturday night this weekend we had it being back to being about what unites all Celtic fans, regardless of whether you work for the club or you're a shareholder or you're just a fan, and that's the team on the pitch. We all want to see them win, and it felt like in unison everyone was tuned into their TVs. If you were at the game, even better, of course. And it was all about get the 3 points, close the gap in on Hearts, and continue the domestic rebuild that Martin O'Neill and Sean Maloney have began to undertake. But in the fullness of time, as we've seen the match unfold, sadly, this was a rather unforeseen sequence of events, and not totally surprising. St Mirren, particularly at home, have normally been quite a formidable opponent, but I think from everything we've seen in this match, with it being a real contest of football, a real football match, it was really crystallised, it was really epitomised all of the failings in the current squad in terms of the management of the club and the construction of the team through the transfer window, really for all there to see. In the video today we'll break down what we've seen and what we didn't see in this game, as well as go through the match ratings and as well as the big takeaways as we now turn our attention to midweek action against Feyenoord. At any point in the video, if you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We recently broke through 15,000 subscribers. Thank you very much for all the support, everyone. But our goal, our ambition is to get to 18,888, and we cannot do that without your support. So if you do enjoy the content here, smash the subscribe button for more content like this. We had a video that went out last week where we're really looking at the forward department and the musical chairs, the revolving door that we've had there over the last 4 or 5 seasons, with the money made, the goals that we've acquired, we've accrued, and obviously still then went and let out the door. That video was very well received. You guys all seem to love it, and we smashed the like goal on that video. And I guess on Monday we'll have out the winger equivalent, and again there's a lot of food for thought for how the forward line has been treated, has been developed over the last 4 or 5 seasons. But yeah, plenty of content out on the channel, so feel free to check it all out if you do enjoy this one. But let's just get stuck straight into it. Now, looking at the starting 11, it's kind of hard to say that there was many surprises in the team. I think a lot of it really did pick itself, but I must confess, I did think that the performance we've seen from JSP before the international window would have probably lent to him starting again in this one. The physicality of St Mirren was going to be a feature of this match, and in that wide right centre-back kind of position was definitely not below par, was definitely not, holding the team back in any way. And for the first 60 minutes he played, or 70 minutes, whatever it was, I thought he did pretty well. Anthony Ralston came back into this one, which I did find a bit of a surprise, and as the game went on, maybe that was for good reason. But the midfield, I didn't see this happening. We had McGregor, Engels and Rio Hatate coming in to start this game. Now, since Martin O'Neill and Sean Maloney have been back in the building, we've seen 2 combinations of midfield. We've either seen McGregor, Engels, and in the number 10 position or the second striker position, Ben de Gren. The game right before we had the international break, we had the return of the wee guy midfield, which was Callum McGregor alongside Luke McKeown, with a kind of double piston, double pivot kind of action, with Rio Hatate being in the number 10 spot. Now, Hatate did fantastic in the game right before the international break. Engels came off the bench and was brilliant in the game as well. And we did say in the preview segment coming into the weekend here that maybe a hybrid could happen, and I wasn't against it. All 3 of these guys were in Glasgow, were in Lennoxtown the entire international break, so if there was going to be some sort of hybrid approach between the 2 sets of midfield that O'Neill and Maloney has fashioned together so far, I would have liked to have seen it be the best version of everything that worked well. And I guess this is really where I want to start the video off, because so much of what made this game really bad is that this was big deja vu. This could have been a game from 2 months ago. This could have been a game from any time really in the Brendan Rodgers Mark II era, because all the way through this game we were just pitched so far apart from one another, and Hatate in this attacking midfield position doesn't do the same job as Luke McKeown, doesn't do the same job as Ben de Gren, and that is be real striker support. There was huge segments in this game where the midfield, the best thing from the Martin O'Neill, Sean Maloney era in the midfield is that the midfield has been closer together. They've been able to play together and move through the lines, move through the thirds with the team, and with a bit of intensity and expectancy to get into the box, to get shots away with someone else in the team pretty quickly. And as I say, they were just too far apart from one another. It was quite hard to see at times where, because Hatate in this number 10 position he's just going to fall back into the sort of player he is. And quite a lot of the time, where I had the midfield to horizontal, I guess we would say. There were two, like, deep in the pitch, and whenever we were playing the ball forward, if we just put the St Mirren team on screen really quickly, Tuneki would have the boy Richardson faced up with him, and if he could get by him, there was two boys getting ready to face up to defend him, if he was able ever to do that. And as you can see with the amount of players that St Mirren generally had behind the ball, with the way our midfield went at times like this, we were just throwing the ball away, we were just playing it up into space, and nobody could really do much with it. The counter to that sometimes is we would actually have the midfield a little bit more, I guess you would say, vertical, where there was no angles, there was no lines, and it was quite simply like just pass it straight up. And again, St Mirren did a pretty good job of killing space, snuffing stuff out, and making passing lanes really difficult to find. And as a result, we just never really worked through the thirds, we just never really got through the pitch well enough. Now, with the JSP thing, I did expect us to be, coming into this game quite left-leaning. Tierney, the only available left-back, high as a kite, obviously, after his heroics for Scotland. And Tuneki being clearly seen as, like, the creator, the kind of spark in the team. And as we know with Dyson Maeda on the right, he can be effective down this right-hand side, but he really wants to come in and be the second striker himself. And, again, if we're playing balls down the left, he can just be in at the back post and be in blind spots of defenders. And with him and Ralston both playing really narrow, we did go quite lopsided. Everything we did in this game was very left side focused. And really it became so much so that some of the best stuff that Hatate did in this game would be like a switch of play out of a crowd round to Ralston, or he'd maybe be in this type of area here and he would get by his man, give a wee flick over the head into Engels or Ralston or something like that. And we didn't really have that penetration. We didn't really have those runners going beyond the front line. We didn't really have those balls played into space quick enough for our attacking players, our quick players, to try and make something of it. And honestly, like, I could have fell asleep watching this. I was starting to think Celtic playing late kickoffs is absolutely brutal if it's going to be a game like this, because I was fighting sleep like no one. Again, just everyone was very isolated in the game. We never really got any patterns of play. And if you go back and watch the highlights, I've already done that a few times, and there's not really much footage for us to pull out to use in this game. St Mirren could have scored, forget about the own goal and the disallowed stuff or whatever, but St Mirren could have genuinely scored 3 goals in this game. They were very, very close with, top of the toe little touches that just come off the target or just hit the post, shots from distance that come off the woodwork as well. And St Mirren, created far better quality chances than Celtic in this one. One thing that I did think was quite a nice feature of the game, somebody said it was because of his shoulder or whatever, which is fine, but quite often we actually got the ball played out really quickly, although the midfield would be quite spread out at times. Whenever Schmeichel was collecting the ball, Schmeichel played 55 successful passes in this game, and 6 of them were marked down as accurate long balls, and I think all 6 of them were those little ones where he was just dropping it and like side kicking it, and he was doing great at just fizzing the ball straight into the halfway line, into Hatate, into Engels, maybe even somebody else if they were a bit deeper, and getting us on the halfway line really quickly. And every time that happened, I was getting on the edge of my seat a wee bit. I was starting to wake up and go, oh, brilliant, we might actually create something here. But again, every time the ball came into these zones, fair enough, Schmeichel's been away on international duty. I think we had 12 players in total that travelled away. But particularly the engine room here, they should be tippy-top well versed on how we're looking to exploit St Mirren. And again, the front three, Tuneki's not. Tuneki's been in the building, so I guess you could do some work with him. But we never got Johnny Kenny really through one-on-one with the goalkeeper. He had one shot from this type of position, which he ballooned over. And Dyson Maeda, all the way through this game, was relatively ineffectual. And with Tuneki being put on the ball against 3 or 4 guys, like, nothing went anywhere. We had no ideas, we had no creation. Now, the second half is where things get interesting, because at half-time we make a substitution. We take off Johnny Kenny for Luke McKeown. Now, at this point in time, we all know that Dyson Maeda is going to go up front, and eventually what looks like happens is mainly McKeown goes out to the right. Now, this really did further highlight a little tactical difference, I think, that Martin O'Neill, Sean Maloney following him have had the team prepped for coming into this game, that is different to the Rodgers style of play, and it did kind of lend itself into everyone being spread out across the pitch. And we had a lot of focus, we had a lot of attention on our front three being very high and very wide, trying to stretch that back line of St Mirren across as much of the pitch as possible to create then space. So if Dyson does have 2 guys around him, he's also got like 15 yards of a radius to maybe drop into a space to pick the ball up and then play it down a channel, for example. And in principle it works fine. I'm a big proponent, if you've got a front three, of playing high and wide. I can get a lot of the method and a lot of the strategy behind doing so. But when you couple that with the midfield being so far apart and us really struggling to play in between the lines. St Mirren doing a really good job, like I say, of cutting off passing lanes. And again, if the ball comes out to McCowan, he's got a man to deal with, and then there's two boys not too far away from him. And to have a striker that's buried behind us, to have a midfielder that's nowhere near able to support, again, we're just putting people out, we're hanging them out to dry. For like a brief moment in the second half when McCowan came on, I was really praying and hoping we were having a bit of a change and we were going to like a box midfield, and there was maybe like one sequence of play or two where you could have took some footage and you would have seen this type of thing developing. And it was one of the two of the first moments where, you know, in the second half the change looked like it sparked us into life. You might remember that. You know, Dyson had a wee run or two, there was a wee chance or so that, well, we got up the pitch a bit quicker and we had a bit more intent. And it really came from this type of thing. And this is a tactic, this is a system I've been crying out for in the team for the last couple of weeks. And, you know, to not really have this happen often enough where we really just stuck with the same tactics and really hoped for something different to happen, it just meant more of the second half got away from us. On the 67th minute, we bring off Tunetke and we add in Yang. Now, we did say before the international window that Martin O'Neill is now a signed up, paid, card-carrying member of the Yang gang. And that, again, I think his fleeting appearance here, what we've seen from Yang, is exactly what we've always seen from Yang. He's on the front foot, he's on his toes, he puts people on the back foot, and do you know what? He's actually quite good at getting by his first man and asking a big question of the second man. But sadly, it just never connects. It never results in he actually lays off somebody successfully, he gets his own shot away, and it's just missing end product, isn't it? Tunetke was in a similar vein, but you feel that if Tunetke was able to buy the space that Yang buys, he would have been more effective. So again, similar to, and again, I've kind of said this about Tunetke since he's came in, but Tunetke, a lot of these wingers that we've been buying, we are trying to, you know, turn the Honda Civic into a Honda Civic Type R or something like that. You know, we're trying to do the car up, kind of thing. And again, like I said in the intro, crystallise, epitomise. We've got, you know, we've got a key element of the team, chance creator, playmaker, the X factor in the team that is undetermined, that really is a work in progress, is someone that we're trying to get up to the level at the moment. We don't clearly have that player that is of the level that we've brought in to maintain status quo, to help us elevate, someone with maybe a bit more experience or whatever. And that's not to throw Tunetke or Yang or anyone like that under the bus because of how ineffectual we were tonight at attacking down the left, because that's all we did in this game. But again, like I said, it's just to further highlight and everything else crystallise. And Maeda wants to play through the middle. Maeda's been good through the middle for us. And he did offer a bit more bite and a bit more intensity. Puts more fear into defenders, you feel like, in this position here. But regardless of who's up front for us, they need support. And in that kind of cry, and honestly, like, when this happened again, like, I'm starting to wake up, I'm starting to get on the edge of my seat with some of the movements that might be happening, that we may be doing a box midfield, whatever. And then we do a double change where we take off both the fullbacks. Tierney comes off and Ralston comes off. And again, when I see this, I'm like, here we go, man. This is what I'm talking about. This is the sort of stuff we're after. And then when you see that it's Dane Murray that comes on and Ben Negren, I'm now thinking at this point, look at the team as it's displayed. We've surely got to have a bit of a box midfield. There's maybe a touch of the Wilfred Nancy's in this team. You could maybe say that, and I'm starting to thinking ahead. You know, I'm starting to get a bit excited. But no, that's not really what happened. Scales basically still lived in this back three left centre back role, but he was very much the left back. You know, he was still kind of finding himself come into these areas here, and Engels was actually moved into a quasi right back. Now, there was one moment, and it's in the highlight package, where he kind of slips and gives the ball away. That's really, for me, the only time he was out and out in the right back position, because for a big part before he comes off eventually, it felt like we had a bit more of a 3-5-2 at times, because in this full-back position, as we've seen with Ralston, Johnson, you know, the list goes on, they do kind of go in front of the centre-backs and kind of hold a midfield position next to McGregor. And we've seen Engels kind of still living in that area, but he had right-back responsibilities, kind of similar to Scales, where he was still in the same job, but had left-back responsibilities. We're asking him to do a job and a half. Engels didn't really stand up to it, but McKeown was still like wide right. Yang was still wide left, and Yang was having to come a bit deeper to try and travel and collect the ball, and that was kind of felt in the game. And yeah, it felt like kind of Negren and Dyson were maybe just, again, Negren didn't really do anything in this game. I don't think we found him, and it felt like it was maybe a bit more 3-5-2-y. I don't know why at this point, if you're not making these changes, you don't just, like, we're going left anyway, like maybe you give these guys secondary roles to cover in on the right hand side or whatever, but I don't know how you just don't go full on unadulterated attack down the left, get everyone up into the final third and try and play the ball into feet. And like I mentioned at the tip-off, the main problem with the team is they're far too far apart. And with these substitutions and the different players that are coming on, we should be able to gang up. We should be able to get together and string some passes together. Now, when it is crowded and it's tight margins, this isn't an easy thing to do. I'm not saying it is. But with the players, the quality that they have, and who's actually on the pitch right now, it's not hard to imagine that these guys can play good possession football and then find a space and exit for one of the attackers to try and create some sort of opening for us. And, Engels eventually comes off for Donovan, and we see very much just... Again, I would still kind of hazard in that this is a bit free at the back, because of just... Murray does come quite far over, and, Scales does go higher, but it feels more like Donovan and Yang are carrying the water in the wide areas, and we are just kind of keeping everyone else in the middle and trying to make something happen. But again, for the players here that have been in the building, Yang, Donovan came back early, I know he was injured and whatever, it just, it feels like we've had a new manager come in here when we haven't. Some of the strengths of the Falkirk game and some of the other matches that this interim regime has had was all gone. And even though we tried to make some really good, ambitious changes, it never really changed the game. It never really caused St Mirren any crazy headaches for any periods of time to reconfigure and to, whose man am I on and where's this guy went and why is he up here, or anything like that. And I did think as well when Donovan came on, it was a big question mark spotlight moment on Balikwisha, because again we're going for the goal, and to bring it right back on for Engels, I kind of get it, because Donovan ultimately gets the assist for Callum McGregor's wonder goal, and he did give us genuine width on the right hand side, which we hadn't had in the whole game. But I really thought at this point of the game the move was take off Hatate for Balikwisha, because again, the best moments we've seen from Balikwisha, he's been on the pitch with Engels and Negren. Engels and Negren's best football has been played with one another as well. And now that these guys have been brought into the game, into the mixture, Hatate wasn't doing anything, really. He was nice in possession at periods. He switched the ball lovely once or twice. But he wasn't really creating much. And again, we need a guy like this with a point to prove, with a price tag around his neck, that is meant to be one of the guys that's going to come in and contribute. So I did think that was, I don't want to say quite sus, but it was certainly unusual. I did find that, unusual. Not seeing Shin Yamada is maybe not too much of a surprise. Same with Bernardo. Two things I'll say at this point. Number one, like I said in the intro, St Mirren always make it a football match, and this was a football match. And when it is a proper football match, there was no minutes of added time added on at the end of the first half. There was no stoppages. There was no nonsense. It really does put into context, or it really does show up what the team is playing on, because there's no haphazard moments in the game where the decision or the run of play gets taken away from you. This was very much, I don't want to say a training ground exercise to demean St Mirren, or I don't mean that in any way, shape or form, but St Mirren played very predictably. St Mirren played football for the entire game, and we played football for the entire game, and maybe a wee bit unpredictably or predictably, depending on how you want to think of it. And for us to have no idea, no invention, despite the quite creative match management I think we had here, the substitutions were very different to what we've had before, very exciting potentially, and then ended up not being that effective, sadly. So yeah, kudos to St Mirren, I think, and just to kind of further highlight that. Falkirk play really good football, and although Falkirk aren't, seen in the same vein as St Mirren, they're actually a lot better in the table, and all their metrics are a lot better. And we were able to, and fair enough, that was Celtic Park's maybe a little bit different of a situation, but all the same, I don't know why we don't have the same game plan as we do for Falkirk. And again, if you go back and watch the Falkirk post-match breakdown here on the channel, every highlight, every goal is very distinctly 3 passes and a shot. It was great to see. It was a breath of fresh air. It was very effective. And since that game, it's not happened again. This would have been a fantastic match to try and bring back that sort of mantra, that ethos, and really inject some tempo into the team. And sadly, we didn't get it. The second thing I'll say is, I can't believe that goal for Scales' own goal was chopped off. If that happened against us, and I know it seems to be the rules and everyone seems to be kind of okay with it, except St Mirren fans, which, I can totally get. I think if that happened against us, I would be raging. I cannot believe that goal. Fair enough, I get the principles and the laws behind it all, but I've never really seen anything like that. And fair enough, I think there was a goal not too dissimilar in the league not too long ago that I've seen the clips for in the highlights or whatever, but when that happened in the moment, I thought this was straw clutching of the highest order. I did not see that goal getting chopped off, and I would be raging if that had happened for Celtic. But the rules are the rules, I suppose, and everyone else seems happy with it, so we'll move on. But I just wanted to add that in there. And as we come to look at the player ratings for the match, it will surprise absolutely no one, especially no regular viewers of CeltsAreHere, that the top performer on the day, the man of the match by all statistical accounts, was none other than Captain Supremo Callum McGregor. Now McGregor gets his goal, which wins the match, which brings home all 3 points, which is kind of the main thing, I suppose, at this point. Sadly, I do believe that this match cannot really be categorised in the hallmark of champions or the 3 points are all that matters, because this is not the first time this has happened this season. This is not the first time that this kind of thing has happened, even in the last 12 months. A lot of the writing on the wall for Celtic's ineptitude in the transfer market and how the team is very disjointed has been compounding for a bit of time here, and McGregor's had to get us out of jail more than once. And I said that when O'Neill came in, especially with his comments post-match after his first game in charge, that O'Neill's going to get the best version of McGregor back in the building. We've seen that since O'Neill's been in, and this again was another huge feather in the cap of the captain. He won a tackle, he made some blocks as well, he won 3 duels, only lost 1, which is a great ratio. He made 2 interceptions, 64 passes, quite a low pass count for the captain, especially away from home in a possession-dominant game like this. But like I mentioned before, a big part of that was Schmeichel was just missing guys like him out and just side-kicking it into the halfway line. He missed 6 passes in total, he got 1 shot on target. He completed 1 dribble, which is probably in the sequence towards the goal. And although McGregor was clearly the best player on the day, he, Hatate, Engels, whoever has the licence to do it, didn't get into the box enough, didn't go beyond the front line often enough, and it was great that he got the goal. It was a real get out of jail situation for the rest of the team. The second highest performer on the day was Kasper Schmeichel, who I thought in his own way played a pretty solid game. You know, St Mirren huffed and puffed, and you know, he did get lucky with some things that hit off the post and whatever. He made some good saves, we should definitely add that in, but he only lost possession twice, and when you see that he collected 55 passes in this game and hit at least 6 balls long up into the pitch, I would have maybe said there might have been 1 or 2 more, maybe those 1 or 2 were the ones that were missed. But he was quite a strong feature of Celtic trying to get up the pitch quite early. He made 2 saves, 1 from inside the box. I say the other stuff would have been off the post or whatever, but quietly a good game from Kasper, I felt. Clearly a positive contributor. Right in behind him was national hero and maybe the bane of Kasper Schmeichel in the midweek, Kieran Tierney, who without a goal or an assist managed to bring in a score of 63 out of 100 himself. He made 4 effective clearances, won 2 tackles, blocked a cross and just a block in general. Won 4 duels, lost 4 duels, and you know, the possession lost for a fullback is just about in the realms of acceptability. We don't mind him losing the ball 19 times there because of the passes that fullbacks make. But he made 56 accurate passes in this one, which is pretty good. 8 missed passes. And yeah, like 17 of them are in the final third, but really these balls into the opposition, those cutting passes, very low volume, and 8 balls into the box is actually a bit higher than I thought it would be. Only 1 dribble, 1 for Tierney. He's normally a bit more effective in that regard. Arnie, the last action hero, Engels, comes in 1 point behind Tierney in this one. He was fouled twice, so he won 2 free kicks for us. He won 3 tackles, which is very impressive. Won 6 duels, only lost 2. Again, fantastic ratio, great numbers. He won an interception himself. Possession loss being 15 is on the high side for someone like him, even though he did fill in at right back for a short time. He gets all of his passing stats kind of boosted because of the set pieces he takes. So he had 5 balls into the box, 2 attempted assists, which means he played the ball in and someone, you know, got a shot away or something like that. And I know we only had 2 shots in the game, but you know, it could have been like a header that was then deflected and might not have been a shot on target, that sort of thing. 12 balls into the final third, and yeah, not really much to say about Engels in this one, but statistically performed quite well. Surprisingly similar story for Anthony Ralston, and you know, watching Ralston in this game, I do agree he was like struggling to keep up with what Celtic needs at right back in terms of tempo and energy, running down the line, etc. Especially with Dyson being really narrow, the requirement for him to be a wide outlet is then further enhanced, and he doesn't really get around the pitch quick enough. And I do think, you know, if Anthony Ralston ever plays for another team outside of Celtic, the stage he's at in his career, he'd probably be a pretty good centre back, you know, with his game IQ. His distribution's pretty handy as well, and his defending isn't fantastic, you know, in terms of being like a commanding centre back or something like that. But you know, teams like St Mirren, Hibs, etc., you could imagine Ralston being like the best defender in a team like that. And I think when the right back for us is needed to be that tight, defensive, safe option that can have a bit of a long range pass in him, Ralston's very workable. But when we need him to be bombing into the box, we need him to be overlapping, he did come up a bit short in this one. He made 2 blocks in the game. He lost more duels than he won, sadly. He made an interception, 78 passes, 20 of them into the final third. He missed 8 passes himself. And this is kind of what I'm trying to talk about here. 2 balls into the box. So a lot of successful actions. Not very much he did was unsuccessful. So statistically, 60 out of 100, a very impressive rating. Actually comes out ahead of Austin Trusty, Liam Scales, which makes a change. Liam Scales normally one of the top performers on stats. But Rio Hatate actually comes out of this game with a 50 out of 100. He gave away 2 fouls. He lost a lot of possession for a centre midfielder. Lost way more duels than he should have. And the pass count, 51 passes, 8 of them missed. 5 balls into the box. I'm quite surprised he actually totted up that amount in terms of his pass count and his effectiveness in the game. Obviously, we know it wasn't really that effective, but yeah, interesting. Colby Donovan comes off the bench to get an assist, so he kind of backdoors his way into a 62 out of 100 performance. He made 7 passes, 3 of them were in the final third. He made 1 long pass into the opposition, and you know, the assist he gets isn't even credited as an attempted assist or a big chance created, because it was literally just gave the ball to McGregor 40 yards from goal and he did the rest from there, didn't he? I think you can see McKeown, a guy who statistically normally performs really well, playing in that right wing position. It just didn't do him any favours. He's got the game IQ, he's got the technical qualities, he's got the intensity to play in that role. I believe he's done that role at other clubs previously, but he was abandoned out on that right wing, very similar to how we've treated our left wingers, and as you can see, he's not really over 45 minutes. Luke McKeown normally does a lot better than this, and 10 possession lost, 1 duel, 1-2 lost. Very low volume and low success. It's very unlike him. But a little quiet shout out to Killian Phillips. We do like to highlight opposition players when it becomes appropriate, and this is a guy that's been on our radar, I think, since last year when we played St Mirren. He stood out in a big way. He might have even scored against us one time last year, but this guy has... I tried to measure him up with Negren when you've seen them on the pitch together. He is a little bit bigger than Negren, but when I watch him on the TV, he looks, posture, stature wise and whatever, like a big modern kind of Celtic midfielder, a Matt O'Reilly, a Rogic type as it were. He won 2 tackles in this game, he made 3 blocks, he won a lot of his duels, he made 3 interceptions, he was feisty at winning the ball back here. And in terms of passing and trying to attack, volume was very low. I think although St Mirren's quality of chances were a lot higher than ours, the volume, you know, didn't really lend itself to Phillips here really been involved in a playmaker role. He was much more involved in a kind of commanding midfielder position. McMenamin was often joining the attack alongside the fullbacks, and between Phillips and Bacchus, they were kind of doing that, you know, killing off the passing lanes, getting in the face of everyone that we were mentioning when we were on the tactics board before. So a really impressive statistical turnout from Phillips. I thought I would just highlight that, no one on the bench. Although this guy Taylor is 22 years of age, and see when he came on, I don't know what it was, they were calling him a young guy, and I don't know what it was. He looks like a wee guy, but he doesn't at the same time. So I just wanted to check in on him. He is 22. When I heard the commentary team referring to him as a young Taylor, I thought, oh, maybe he's like 17 or something. Maybe that's why I think he's got a funny look about him or something. But yeah, there you go. Just a side note. Sorry about that. Now, the big question leaving this game is, what are we doing going forward? What are we doing for Feyenoord? What are we doing for Hibs away the weekend after? Are we going to appoint a new manager? What did the club think about this? What did the scouts think about this? The people that are trying to recruit and build a team, how did they actually see this happening? Do they see the same kind of deficiencies or the same kind of one-dimensional nature that, you know, that we're picking up for Celtic fans just watching the game? It's really hard to imagine or know. But looking at the squad that was selected for this game here, it's maybe GSP could come back into the picture somehow, somewhere. Forrest, by all accounts, picked up a bit of an injury. Hard to imagine he just springs back into life in the next 2 days, and Iheanacho might not be too far away. So it feels like this is kind of the squad for the next week or so. Based on what we've seen tonight, it feels like it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle. I'm kind of enthused by some of the changes we've seen second half here, and I would love to see some of that find its way into the Feyenoord game. Maybe even from the start, as like a bit of a sucker punchy element, like we mentioned before about maybe the introduction of a new manager at this point in time, which is increasingly feeling unlikely at this point. And the longer we leave the international window, the longer I feel we're maybe just going to stick with what we have right now, which I think we all kind of half don't mind in principle, Martin O'Neill being there for the cup final, but we have bigger fish to fry. We've got a squad that is half built. We've got a very important January window. We are behind the 8 ball domestically and in Europe, and we kind of need the new era to start. I don't know if the interim era has really got the answers. Hard to say, hard to feel, because this game was quite conflicting. St Mirren, we don't really grudge, you know, like what we won, you know. Hearts actually drew there a week or 2 ago, so if you want to go on head-to-heads, drawing in Paisley, not really a big deal in isolation, but like I said a few times, it's just a further crystallisation and epitomisation of everything that's kind of wrong with the team at the moment. So huge question marks ahead of the Feyenoord game. I'll see you for the breakdown and for the preview of that game as we come to it as well, of course. Let me know your thoughts and feelings on Celtic versus St Mirren. Who were the top performers? Who should have made, thoughts and feelings. Let me know. Who was the winners and losers? What could have happened? What did happen? What should have happened? Whatever you want. On screen and now some other stuff that we've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy, like that striker video, maybe the winger video's out by now. And don't forget to catch all the AGM content because Celtic's been pulling it off its YouTube channel. Hail, hail, and moan the hoops.